fundamentally, it's true for Tony and it's true for Dave and true for all of our listeners. You reproduce who you are and what you do. I'll just say it again because I want it to sink in. You reproduce who you are and what you do.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Follow2Lead Podcast, a Christian leaders podcast powered by EBEB Solutions, energy benefits for every business. Go to ebebsolutions.com today and explore how real tax savings could free up capital in your organization. Friends, today on the podcast, we've got a treat, the legendary Dave Ferguson. You might know Dave from his role at Exponential. He's one of the founders and the current CEO of Exponential, and his latest book is called Multipliers. It's all about how we as leaders are called to multiply who we are. And one of the things I appreciate about the book is that it really dives in deep, that you're going to multiply what's inside of you. It's very aligned with what I believe about disciple making, good leadership, culture, values. As leaders, so often we want to produce movements and lasting communities, but we forget that that starts with what we're multiplying from within. Dave and I talk about that. We talk about the burden of leadership, about knowing when to pivot. Some really great dialogue in there. He's an excellent storyteller, as you might expect. And we dive deep on leadership, the church, and disciple making. I know you're going to love this conversation. If you do me a favor. Give me some feedback on your thoughts, your takeaways. You can email me, tony@twmilt.com. Now, here's a quick word from our partners and my conversation with Dave Ferguson. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm so excited today to have the CEO of Exponential, Dave Ferguson. Dave, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us today.
Hey, thank you, Tony. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
You know, we were talking before I hit record, and I told you about this year, we're wrestling with the 12 most Googled leadership questions. And the question for this month is about handling conflict and hard conversations. So let's say that you were sitting across from a young leader, maybe somebody who's thinking about starting a church or being bivocational, or just somebody who freshly promoted into a new role. What advice or what kind of wisdom or experience would you help them wrestle with? How do they handle hard conversations and conflict as a leader?
Good question. A few things come to mind. One is, and it probably depends on their temperament and their personality style, but either way, don't let it linger. I work, and I think there was a season for me where I would never say conflict avoidance, but I did not like conflict. But I mean, I've learned, don't let it linger. And I would say I even hustle to make sure I don't have a backlog of things where people have something against me or I have something against them. I'm almost to a fault. I may be too aggressive sometimes about dealing with stuff, but I would encourage them. Yeah, don't let it linger. The second thing is, I think Matthew 18 is a great guide for us. And I, try to go to them in person and probably even more than once. But as much as I can until that really just does not work. And then, how do you bring somebody else or maybe somebody's else in to get it involved? But those, I try to stick with that. And I don't know who, was it Ken Blanchard way back in the day? I think he might have been the guy who said, praise in public and correct in private. Does that sound right?
I think so.
And either way, I like whoever said it. I like it. I'm pretty good at affirming people, catching them doing it right. And I think you do that, quite frankly, both in private and in public as much as you possibly can. But if there's a conflict that needs to be resolved, if it's at all possible, I think you start with that in-person kind of one-on-one and do that in private. Actually, it's interesting you asked that too. If we go a little further, on my Substack, I think it's getting ready to post even as we're speaking right now. I wrote an article. What did I call it? What did I end up titling it? How how to love the people who hurt you when they need you or something like that. But basically the bigger idea of it is, well, I'll just tell you the story. So last weekend I was going out on the prairie path, getting ready to go for a run, and I'm stretching, and there's another guy there, and I recognize him. And to be honest with you, I think the last time we had a lengthy conversation was when he stood up in a public forum and basically kind of unloaded on me. So you can
Oh,
imagine, I know, it's like the worst. It was like a leadership event. There were several hundred people there, and this is several years ago now. And let me think what had actually happened. Basically, I was in the middle of kind of vision casting. Hey, here's the next place I feel like God needs to take us, that kind of stuff. He stands up and basically just mid-sentence starts unloading on me in front of everybody. There were some other reasons this was going on. We
sure,
find
of
out in
course.
retrospect.
Right.
But that never really got resolved. So like I see him stretching there and I'm stretching. We're both getting ready to go to run on a prairie path. And it's like, that's what I'm thinking about, right? He says, "Hey, Dave, can I ask you a question?" And I was like, in my head, I'm going like, oh my gosh, we're going to do this.
No.
And then he says, and he starts telling me about his 2 adult kids that are no longer attending church and really don't even identify as Christians anymore. And so in my head, I'm going like, I'm still kind of like going like, this dude, totally wrong. But now there's like, he wants to talk to me about his kids. And I felt like there was this word that God gave me. This goes way back, and it helped me get through this conversation too. And maybe this will help some of your listeners. And it was this: they're all your kids.
Yeah.
They're all your kids. And when I do a reframing on people who do stupid stuff, and not that I get it all right, because I do stupid stuff, but when I do a reframing on that and begin to see all the people, whether it's in my church or other leaders or some church planners who do things, you're going like, what are you thinking? When I go like, they're all my kids, because I have three kids. I will love them no matter what. They will disappoint me. They may not be in aligned with me. They may say things that hurt, but I know I will go to my grave and I will relentlessly love my kids. And I felt like God was saying, hey, the same way you feel about your biological kids, I want you to feel like that about all my kids. And so I think that's also more recently helped inform how I deal with conflict. It doesn't mean there's not boundaries. It doesn't mean there shouldn't be accountability, that kind of stuff. But in that situation, like on the prairie path there, it allowed me to go ahead and answer his question. I spent about 10 minutes with him, kind of a pastoral kind of response. Hey, here's how I would think about that if I was you. And that was way more important than me going back, how many years and going like, dude, remember when you did this? So I don't know if that's helpful to your listeners or not, but it's been very helpful to me to do a reframing on, hey, they're all my kids.
I mean, the interesting thing about leadership that nobody talks about is the immense amount of grief that comes with the conflict, right? People leaving you, people blaming you, the one-sided conversations because you couldn't talk about how you had to let someone go for things that were private, that were never going to be public. And like that burden of like, especially when you've done it for as long as you have. And in one community, those people, you see them at the White Sox game or you see them in all the different spaces and you're like, I don't want to talk to them right now, Jesus.
Right. Or, and you're right. When you do it in one place, and it's been, I want to be clear, being a community, it has been just a gift and the people have been amazing and God has been kind. But having said all that, yeah, I've had people who come to the church, leave the church, come back to the church, leave the church again angry, and then come back. It's like, when you're there 30 years, you're going like, seriously. And you do kind of, and again, that's where they're all my kids. You go like, if one of your kids didn't show up at Christmas because they were pissed off, and then the next year they came back, you'd get big hug. You're going like, hey, it's good to have you back.
Yeah, you'd slaughter the fattened calf is what you do, right? Like
that's exactly right. That's the thing. Don't forget, because we are that person. That's the thing. That's the other thing that I think in the process, God was reminding me like, oh, that's really noble of you, Dave, but don't forget you are also that person.
Let me ask you this, because when I was doing research, one of the things that I think I learned about you is that your top strength finder gift is optimism, right? It's positivity,
It
right?
is positive.
Positivity,
Yeah.
which
That's one of
borderlines on futurism, right? And so,
well, futuristic's another one. So they're
yeah,
both right there.
they're both right there. So here's the question, because I can't imagine somebody who's like eternally optimistic wanting to run towards conflict. So is conflict
Yeah.
resolution like what you're talking about? Is that like how do you develop that skill? Does that just come with the gray hairs? Like what? How does that work?
No, I think it's a discipline. I mean, for folks like me, no, I think it's a discipline because you let enough of them go and result. And also, sometimes God pairs you with a spouse who's not that way.
Oh, preach.
And it's good
Have you
for
met
you.
my wife?
Oh, have you met mine? Yeah, and she is sassy, and I love her for it, and I need it. Um, but yeah, I think for me, it's a rigor of discipline. That's where I think maybe when I start, I said, don't let them linger. Don't have a backlog, because those will pile up, and they will haunt you.
Hmm. One of the interesting things about your latest book, Multiplier, is that it kind of bridges a lot of gaps. It bridges emotional gaps. It bridges. I love the part in there about the gauges, and so this is kind of a whole body approach to leadership. I've seen and read a lot of leadership books, podcasting for over 450 episodes. And one of the unique
Nice.
things is this is kind of like it's a totality kind of book. When you sat down to write this book, what did God tell you? How did you know God was like, Dave, I want you to write this kind of book? It's not just going to be about leadership or about mental or physical health. It's going to be about all of it.
I think being wired, if you want to use Bible words with an apostolic gift, or if you want to use
Yeah.
business words, more entrepreneurial, I've always had a passion for scaling things and multiplication and, starting something from 0 to 1. So the multiplication part, which is the back half of the book, which I think totally relies on Jesus' principles there, that's been with me for a very, very long time. I think it's probably been in the last decade plus that this growing realization that, yeah, while multiplication is really important and movement making is really important because that's how the mission gets accomplished, fundamentally, it's true for Tony and it's true for Dave and true for all of our listeners. You reproduce who you are and what you do. I'll just say it again because I want it to sink in. You reproduce who you are and what you do. So the what you do part, we wrote about that in Exponential. We wrote about it again in Hero Maker and came back to it again in Multiplier in a really simple back of the napkin kind of way. But the first half of the book, which you're referring to, is going like, okay, and you need to also be healthy, because if you're not healthy, then your organization's not going to be healthy. If you're not healthy, your church isn't going to be healthy. Your small group, your ministry, whatever it is you're leading is not going to be healthy. And it felt like, particularly over the last 6-7 years, as we decided how to define what a multiplier is. Back in the day, we might have said a multiplier was a disciple-making leader who champions reproduction, but we felt like we had to be intentional about going, no, a multiplier is again, we put that word in there on purpose, particularly for this particular era of time, a healthy disciple-making leader who champions reproduction. Because if you're I mean, we could talk about it if you want. I mean, being in Chicago and leading a large
Sure.
church, there's a lot of my peers and friends who, because of areas of unhealth, what I call in the book, drifted.
Yeah.
And when I say they drifted, I think they ended up someplace they never intended to be. And I
Okay,
think
I really want to dive into this because one of
Sure.
the things that struck me about the book that I thought was super interesting was the idea of drift. And one of the things that we say around here a lot is that if you aren't dedicated to your disciplines, you'll be destroyed by your distractions.
No,
And so
that's well said. Say it again.
yeah, if you aren't dedicated to your disciplines, you'll be destroyed by your distractions. And
Yep.
here's the thing that I notice when I'm working with Christian executives and entrepreneurs is that most of them don't know that they've drifted. And so let me ask you this. How does someone who maybe is listening to this or picks up your book for the first time, when they look at their gauges, it looks right, but in reality, they're way off mission. How do we know when we're in a drift?
Well, I mean, one of the things I could, I don't know. Are you gonna? Is the video gonna be available for people too? I mean,
Yep,
I know we're on.
absolutely.
All
Yep.
right, so let me just. Here's my journal. Let's see if I can find it here. So yeah, this isn't today because I actually haven't done it today. But I mean, like literally for me, like there's 4 different gauges for your audience if they have, because they probably have not read the book yet. It just came out. Relational, physical, mental, and spiritual. And I
Yep.
know this is going to sound a little bit like an infomercial, but I'm convinced of this. If you will spend 4 minutes a day, and that's not a lot of time, 4 minutes a day, every day, checking these gauges of just a minute, prayerfully reflecting on how you're doing. And I will add this caveat when I put it in the book too, and also doing it in community.
Mm-hmm.
It's not foolproof because I don't want to underestimate how we can lie to ourselves. But I'll tell you
Sure.
what, if you'll do this, it will dramatically mitigate drift. So basically, like you can see here, like I did, come on, what's going on here? There it is. RPMS. Can you see it there?
Yeah, a little bit. Yep.
Here we go.
Yep.
RPMS.
Perfect.
And then I actually drew a little gauge on how I'm doing. And then I kind of like it. I put a number. I kind of like to keep score of things. I'm a little weird that way. And so I
Listen,
give
all the leaders who listen to this podcast love to keep score. They all want to know if they're winning.
right. And this tells me if I'm winning personally. And here's the thing. If you don't do this kind of stuff, I'm telling you, you're going to, drifting for a week, nobody's going to notice. You're not going to notice. Drift for a month, maybe you don't notice. Drift for a couple of months or a year. Yeah. You'll be doing things, thinking things, feeling things that you don't want to do, see, or feel.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
and
right.
that's, I was in a small group. I think I wrote about this in the book. I was in a small group with pastors of the largest churches in Chicagoland for 8 or 9 years. And we'd gather, 4 or 5 times a year, start at 10 in the morning, go till 2 in the afternoon, have lunch together. Awesome, unbelievable group. I mean, you talk about, Christian leaders. I mean,
Just
it was like,
powerhouses. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, and it wasn't just even like Chicago. If you started listening to the names of people, these were some of the best in the world. And so I would bring like a long list of questions and leave with a long list of answers. I mean, it was like the ultimate coaching session every time. But if I tried to reassemble that group today, about half the seats would be empty.
That's
because
crazy.
somehow they drifted. Yeah. And, I don't even need to name the names. You know who some of the folks are, and some of the people listening might know all of them. But that was part of my motivation too, because if you're going to maximize your impact, you want to make a really huge impact. How old are you, Tony?
45.
45. Okay. So God's got another, 20, 30 easy years for you.
Yeah.
If you don't do this kind of stuff, you could end up checking out at 50 or 55, and it might be physically because you're not taking care of yourself, or relationally because you're letting yourself drift. And that's why I think that's why it's so important. And it becomes even more obvious to me too, as I think as God is kind and gives me influence. I'll have people literally come up to me now. Like I was just down at an event in Houston with the Houston Church Planning Network. They're doing great work down there. And I was sitting at the table before I got on to speak. And one of the guys actually even said, and I'm not close to this person, but they said, "Hey, I just want you to know I'm praying for you." And it really makes you feel old though, too, because he's like, "I want you to finish well." And basically what he's really saying is, please don't screw up.
Right.
Please don't screw up. Well, that's what he's saying. I don't know. I don't always share this, but there was a young lady that I actually taught in grad school. So I teach over the Wheaton grad school once in a while. And she was there and we've kind of become friends. She planted a church and stuff. And I ran into her at a conference and she was even more bold. She was like, "Hey, just keep your pants on, would you? Just please keep your pants on." I'm like, got it.
Got it.
So, I mean, we laugh and stuff, but we got to find what was the saying you said again? What is it? The disciplines
if you aren't
of
dedicated to your disciplines, you'll be destroyed by your distractions.
right. And for me, that's the discipline. And so that's in the book,
right.
Multiplier. I offer that to everybody. Hey, here is a really simple, reproducible discipline
Yep.
that you can do it. And if you'll do that every day, 4 minutes a day, and it doesn't really matter where the gauge is. It doesn't really matter what the numbers are. What really matters is that you're prayerfully reflecting on how am I doing relationally? How's the things with my wife if I'm married? How are things with my kids? How are my things with my friends? How am I doing physically? Am I stewarding this body? Because we're whole people.
Right.
And then mentally, how am I doing emotionally? How's my thought life? Am I depressed or anxious? Do I need to get some help? How am I doing spiritually? If you'll just pause and reflect and take steps to course correct, because we always drift, take steps to course correct. And especially if you'll do it in community, share with other people, man, that's a big deal.
One of the things that I really appreciate about the way that you package this is near and dear to my heart is that you went from these kind of gauges to then the practices. So it's like, hey, it's not enough just to gauge it, but are you actively doing everything? So like, the 4 practices of a multiplier, making disciple makers. It's my favorite one ever. Establish spiritual community,
I love our little
mobilize.
conversation we got on here.
We should mobilize new leaders and launch church expressions.
Yeah.
So, you could have put 1,000 practices into this. You limited it it's very succinct. It's very measurable. Everybody likes a good SMART
Can I say
goal.
something about that real quick?
Yeah,
And
please.
part of my
That's why.
intention on this, Tony, with the and we'll come back to the practices, but part of my intention from the very beginning is I wanted to take things that are really hard to do consistently and make it as simple as possible to understand. Like this would make my day. If you text me sometime and go like, "Hey, I wanted to see this napkin from Panera." I was with a buddy of mine and I was showing him, "Hey, here's how you could be a multiplier. Here's the 4 gauges and here's the 4 practices." And I drew it on the back of napkins because we give in the book, we give this tool, a multiplier tool that is designed for you not only to do it, okay, because if you're going to be a multiplier, but for you to share it with other people so they can do it. So anyway, back to practice.
Well, so listen, I think this is one of the things that we don't talk about enough in leadership is what you're giving. Is it a word that my buddy Justin Gravitt uses is it pass onable, right? Is like, hey, can you give it to someone? People ask me all the time, like, what's the most effective tool in disciple making? And my answer is always the same: whatever tool you'll use. Right.
Yes.
Because you can't become a master carpenter if you never use the tool. You can't become a master at anything if you never use the tool. And that's where most leaders struggle. Is like, hey, you can have all the values, you can have all the KPIs, you can have the lead and the lag. But if you're not using it and teaching your people how to use it, make it pass onable. And so this is, I actually really appreciated the art in this book because I think it's made for people like me who aren't artistic, but are really like to demonstrate like, you can do this and it's just that easy.
That is exactly our hope. And credit to a guy named Dan Lee who kind of took that and we worked together on that. He designed it as far as the graphic and the way it looks. And sometimes I get grief from people too, because like I wrote a book called Bless. Here's 5 everyday ways to love your neighbor and change the world. And there's, it gives a simple acronym for here's the 5 practices. But guess what? People remember it.
Right.
So I encourage leaders, and if it's the multiplier tool, use that. But if they're core values or core practices, make it sticky. Do the extra work of not just getting it right, but making it memorable and accessible for people. That's how movement happens. That's how you scale things.
I'm curious, out of all the practices, which one for you is the hardest?
Of those 4 practices, good question. I think probably, because again, I'll hit them real quick. So number 1, making disciple makers. And these are all the things Jesus did, because he went out and grabbed this group and then he put them into a community. So establish spiritual community. That's number 2, because relationships are a catalyst for life change. Got to do it in community. Then thirdly, just like Jesus, after he spent some time with them, mobilized new leaders. He sent them out 2 by 2. And then the 4th one, right before he left, he launched a church. So launched Church Expression. I think probably the 4th one, just by its nature, even though my definition of a church is a very simple ecclesiology. I think that's probably still the most challenging one to do. because the others are smaller. The first one is just one person. The second one is putting together a group. The third one is basically hero making kind of stuff of like, how do you, you know, give them the blessing and send them out. I think probably launching church expressions is the most challenging of the four. But it starts with the disciple making. If you don't get that right, none of the other stuff happens or has a chance.
So what's that look like in your life? Let's get into the weeds a little bit. If I was like, let's say the Lord led you to a young guy, maybe somebody in his 20s who's up and comer CEO, somebody who matches well with you personality wise. We always talk about finding people who are fat, right? Faithful, available, teachable, right? From the NAVs. And if they said, okay, Dave, will you disciple me? I'm sure there's hundreds of leaders who want to be discipled by you frequently. How do you discern the right yeses in that? And then what's your rhythm? What's your practice? What's it look like?
Well, me and you kind of had a little bit of a sidebar conversation right before we jumped on here. And if you want to go there, we can, because I feel like I've recently apprenticed a new lead pastor at the church that I led for 30 plus years, a guy named Ted. And I continue to have that kind of discipling relationship with him. And at the same time, I also want to be clear, but I am not getting in his way. And he is doing an awesome job. Okay. So that's it. And so it's a little more challenging, I feel like now, because I don't have the rhythms that we had in our local church, because now I'm the CEO of Exponential. So I'm figuring that out. But I mean, I could tell a quick story that kind of gives an example of all four practices. There's a guy named Rick who was a salesman. He's not been to seminary. He's not a pastor. He's just a good dude. I got into a disciple making relationship with him, and actually him and his wife offered to like host a small group. So practice number one, making disciple makers. I grabbed a bunch of other people, and this sounds kind of goofy, but I if I'm going to start a small group with people I'm trying to make into disciples, I just find people I like.
Sure. Yep.
So it's like, if I'm going to do this, it might as well, and we also talk about this a lot at Exponential. We talk about being friends on mission. So that's what they are.
Buddies, right?
Exactly. So usually the people that are in my small group are people that I like. And so making disciple makers, establish spiritual community. Rick and Alinda said, hey, we'll host this group. We'd meet on Tuesday nights. This was kind of funny. So I invited Rick to one of our Exponential conferences. This is a couple of years ago. And I thought he'd find it was interesting and get inspired and stuff. But one of the things we always do in the last session at every Exponential conference is we challenge people to plant a church. And we say, hey, if you are ready to plant a church, we want you to come forward. We're going to pray for you. We want to actually anoint you with oil. This is going to be your commissioning moment. So the guy who's speaking, I don't know if you know James Meeks. So James Meeks was speaking, closed the session, and James does this whole run on, you know what? You ever thought about planting a church? You don't need to have a building. You just need to be available. You don't need to have money. You just need to be available. You don't need to go to seminary. You just need to be available. So, and he says, and if you want to plant a church, come forward. We want to commission you and pray over you. So I look down the aisle, and there's my buddy Rick, who's in my small group, going forward. And I'm like, what the heck is happening? Now, the backstory on Rick, he loves the special needs community.
Sure.
Every summer, he goes off to camp with a bunch of these kids. He comes back, and I mean, like, no matter what the question is in our small group, that's the answer. He tells some story about being at camp, this all abilities camp with these kids that he loves, and he gets emotional. He just loves them. And so I see him go forward. Afterwards, I pull him aside. I'm going, dude, I couldn't help. I saw you going forward. What's going on? And he looks at me like I'm kind of an idiot. He goes like, the guy said, if you're available, I'm available. And I said, what are you thinking? And he says, hey, do you think we could plant a church for the all abilities community? I'm like, I don't know. Let's give it a shot. And we put him through our micro church training. And a few months later, in our small group, so we make disciple makers, right, with Rick, put them in a spiritual community. That's practice number 2. Then the third practice is mobilize new leaders. In our small group on Tuesday night, he sits down on the edge of his coffee table in his own living room, tells the story to everybody about his I'm available prayer, and says how he wants to plant this church. Our small group comes around him, we all just lay hands on him. So we're kind of non-denominational, right?
Sure.
So this counts as ordination.
You're you're doing it.
Right. And we pray for him. We say, okay, you go do that with our blessing. And it's been this church has been going for over I think 3 years now. But the very first Sunday met in a local gym and had 125 people that showed up, and it continues to grow. And he's serving these people that other communities leave out.
Hmm.
And I mean, like when my wife and I we go, she'll say calls it beautiful chaos. And it's awesome what he's doing. So I mean, that's an example of how in everyday people, I think those 4 practices that Jesus did and challenged us with are very doable. And not only to do it yourself, but challenge others to do it.
You know, it's so interesting, right? Because it's I think that one of the things that I like about your approach and this writing is that what we see is that it becomes a core part of what it means to be a Christian. Because I think we've
Yeah.
relegated a lot of these practices to the church instead of to the Christian. And you know, the church is obviously a super important part of being a Christian, but also it's not meant to be consumeristic. So I think
No,
this
we're supposed
happens a
to
lot.
like equip the saints, right?
Right. Right. I think this happens a lot in businesses though, is that
Oh, sure.
employees come in and they're like, well, I'm here to do this part of my job and I'm not an owner. And so I'm curious, you train up leaders all over the world. How do you get them to own the idea of an owner's mindset and not an employee's mindset?
I think again it goes back to that the idea underneath a multiplier. You reproduce who you are and what you do.
Yeah.
So like with our exponential team right now, I've been telling them, I said, because we're creating these frameworks that we're sharing, yes, all across the United States, but we also have Exponential Europe, Exponential Australia. They're sharing Multiplier there. We're getting ready to expand even beyond that. And I tell them, I said, what we have to do though, is that every person who's a part of the exponential team, when Tony gets close to them, they're going like, wow, these guys not only believe this stuff and teach this stuff, but they're doing the stuff.
Yeah.
So like Sabir, Sabir Robinson. Sabir is one of our it's a graphic artist for our team. If you talk to Sabir, he will tell you that every week he's meeting with about a dozen high school students that he is making into disciple makers. He would also tell you that he's also meeting with a men's group that he's doing the exact same thing, and he will tell you about that. Now, is Sabir making some of the the graphics that you talked about in the Multiplier book and helping with all that kind of stuff across the country? Yes, but when you get really close to Sabir, you're going like, not only is he helping teach it, but this guy's actually doing it.
Sure. He's
And
on
I
mission.
think that's the thing we got to
Yeah.
get. Yeah, how everybody, like you're saying, everybody has to own it.
Everybody has to own it. I think that, this is growing up in the church. One of the things that often happens is that we relegate the parts of our Christian identity to employees versus the idea of like, it's the tension that comes with the North American church model is like, man, you've got this big, and that's the tension that comes with scale and growth is that
Yep.
every time you add somebody in, you have to work twice or 3 times as hard to get them to own it and to believe it and to do it. And so I
Well,
love
one of the
that
things
as a
let me throw this in. One of the things I really challenge leaders to do, you're talking about it gets harder as you scale and grow something. Think about this and see if this works for you, Tony. And I encourage them like, you want to lead at the smallest level of your organization and then also at the largest level. And as it grows, that's when you train and trust other people. You delegate that to them. So for example, um, the whole time I was the lead pastor at community, I also led a small group.
yeah.
Why was I? Well, one, I needed to do it, but also I wanted to create a culture where people are making disciple makers and they're mobilizing new leaders. They have an apprentice leader that they're sending out. I felt like I needed to do that if I was going to challenge, because I think the moment you quit doing the small things, then it kind of gives permission to everybody else. Like, oh, you don't have to actually do it because look, and you can rationalize it too because you're going, oh, well, look, we got all this big stuff going on. I don't have time for that anymore. No, 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 no. You need to do both at the smallest level and then at the largest level and trust and train in between. Like, Do you know the Alpha course?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, you know Nikki Gumbel, who is the
Yep.
primary developer. One of the things I love
Nikki and,
about
and
him.
Pippa.
Yes, exactly. So I've had the opportunity to hang out with them some, but here's the thing that's coolest about them in particular. Every semester for like, I don't know what it's been, 40, 50, a lot of years, every semester, Nikki leads an Alpha course.
Wow.
You know what I mean? It's not like, oh, he outgrew it. I mean, no, that's part of what makes that culture, I think, so strong. And I think we need to do the same kind of thing.
Yeah, I think if you're a leader listening to this, the question that you have to ask yourself is, am I doing the activity that grew the organization to where it is today? Am I still
Right.
engaged in that activity? Is that sales? Is that engineering? Is that anything? Because if you're not in the weeds, now you have to visit them. You can't live in them, right? Like it's not,
And
you
you
have
don't
to
do all the you don't do all the stuff that's in between. You
in
hire
between,
staff to do all the
right?
stuff in
Yeah, it's
between
so
because
good.
like I still want to lead a small group, quite frankly. But I also know that part of what I'm doing now is also helping reproduce exponential expressions in other countries. So there's a lot of stuff in between. But if I could do the smallest and the largest, that's how you continue to grow, and the organization has integrity.
Yeah, and I think it gives you an opportunity to speak and ask questions and be curious about the steps in the middle because you see it from the top and the bottom. I think when we lose that bottom
That's a
perspective,
good point.
it's just
Absolutely.
now it doesn't mean that you get to assert your will, right? Because you have to understand it, but it
Yeah.
gives you the opportunity to be curious. One of my favorite attributes of Jesus is his ability to ask questions. And I think
Yep.
sometimes leaders get so far removed from the organization, they stop asking questions like, why are we doing it that way?
That's good. I agree.
When a book like this goes out into the to the wilderness, right, and it begins to get picked up by leaders, what's the prayer that's associated with a book like this?
Well, I mean, I'm a pretty big dreamer, so um, this is overall what gets us up every day at Exponential. And now a lot more organizations, both denominations, networks, not-for-profits are buying in, is what we call the 16% mission.
Hmm.
And the 16% mission is this: we want to see 16% of all churches in the United States become reproducing or multiplying churches. Okay, and I'll try to make this fast, okay? Why church planting? Church planting is the best, okay, source of both social capital and spiritual capital that we have. And I say that not from a Christian perspective. I'm just telling you, like, a strategic perspective. If we want this country to be a better place, it's the greatest source of social capital. When people get involved in the faith community, um, the Human Flourishing Study at Harvard proves this out. I could point you to other places too that show this. People give more, they volunteer more. They're
Mm.
basically categorically better neighbors. Not 100%, because we all got neighbors who are Christians who are going like, that guy's not a good neighbor. But overall, when they're involved in the case in a faith community, so better spiritual social capital, but also better spiritual capital. This is how people find and follow Jesus. So you got those two things going when you church plant. If we can get to 16% of all churches doing that, if you remember the diffusion of innovation curve, we're getting a little
Yeah.
technical here. Everett Rogers or Malcolm Gladwell, the tipping point made it popular. Not that I really want 100%, but if I can get to 16%, that 16% will influence the other 84% that this is normative. 10 years ago, we started at 4%. We're now at 7%. We've seen the needle move that much. We'd love to, in the next 5 years, get to 10%. In the next 10 years, get to 16% and beyond. And if we can make that happen. So multiplier is one of the key strategies for us to really move the needle on how do we make that happen.
I love it. I have one more question for you, but before I
Sure.
ask it, I know that the bold ones, my community here, they're going to want to find you all over the interwebs. Where can they pick up their copy of Multiplier? Where can they learn more about you, Exponential, all the things?
Yeah. Multiplier, you can go to Amazon, you can go anywhere. If you want to go to multiplierbook.com, if you get it there and you send me an email, we'll send you the video showing you how to actually do the RPMs. I got a short video, just kind of tutorial, and here's how you can start doing this. checking your gauges every day. I'll tell you what, here's my email too, dave@exponential.org.
Okay.
Dave@exponential.org. So if you buy the book and you send it to me, I'll make sure you get that. And quite frankly, if you got any questions about any of it, I'd love to help however I can. My website is Dave Ferguson at exponential.org. And we would love for people to check out our website at exponential.org, and come and see us at one of our conferences. Or if you go there too, you can also make a commitment to be a multiplier. And there's a whole bunch of things when you make a commitment to be a multiplier at exponential.org that we'll begin to resource you so you can kind of stay the path.
It's awesome. So good. Last question I'm asking people this year. It's about leadership, and it's about who's the greatest leader that you've met in your life in the flesh. No Jesus answers.
No Jesus answers. Greatest. And the greatest. I'm going to say one of the greatest. Okay.
Sure.
And it might be the greatest. I had a mentor, a guy named Bob Buford. Do you know that name?
I don't.
Bob Buford. Bob's a guy who made a buku bucks in cable TV. He started two not-for-profits. One was called Leadership Network and one was called Halftime. He wrote a book called Halftime, and the book probably sold 500,000 copies. And it was about his journey from success to significance. I would encourage particularly any of your business leaders listening in, pick up that book. It'll really challenge you, but also give you some practical tools for how do I make that move from success to significance. Here's a couple things that he did that most people don't know. Early on, he grabbed some of the very first large churches in the United States. Actually, Rick Warren and Bill Hybels. He brought them together along with Peter Drucker. Does that name ring a bell to you?
Oh, yeah, I know
Peter Drucker is the father of modern management, who was also Bob's personal mentor. They would meet every month. Well, I know, what a privilege. So he brought all them together. Most people don't realize this, but it was out of Leadership Network and Bob's effort in convening those people that really the contemporary megachurch movement was scaled. The second thing he did, and this actually started back on literally the day was 9/11. He brought together through Leadership Network again a handful. There was like 10 or 12 of us. I happen to be one of them. Churches across the country that were going multi-site. Everybody thought nobody else had done this. We were the only ones. Him and his organization gathered those innovators again, put them together, and said, "How do we scale this thing?" So in many ways, not only is he the one who's the catalyst for the megachurch movement, but also the multi-site movement. But then he was also someone who mentored me and my co-founder, Todd Wilson, when we started Exponential. And two sayings that Bob always had. I'll give you two of them. And I would encourage all of your leaders listening to live by them. He would say this: "Hey, we're the platform. We're not the show. We're the platform. We're not the show." But here's my favorite one. He'd always say this: "My fruit grows on other people's trees. My fruit grows on other people's trees." And a few years ago, I wrote a book called Hero Maker, and that's who Bob was. I mean, so like the fact that you don't recognize his name, he wouldn't care, but you've seen his fruit on other people's trees.
Is Bob still with us?
No, he passed away a few years ago. But I'm grateful for his influence.
So good. Dave, thank you so much for being so generous with your time today. Thank you for your wisdom.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank
you, Tony.
This was so much fun.
Okay, I'll try to write another book so we can do it again.
Anytime you want to come on, open invitation.
Okay, thank you.
What a great conversation with Dave. I absolutely loved the way he leaned into the idea of our routines and our gauges and the 4 practices that should come from those gauges. As leaders, we're called to have really intentional practices because we're going to multiply whatever's in us. So the coaching question this week is this: how are your gauges? If you were to take a look at the 4 things that Dave talked about, your relationships, your disciplines, your practices, all those things, how would you rate them? pick up a copy of the book or email Dave for the tutorial. And I'd love to hear from you on how that went. If you could do me a favor, rate and review this show on iTunes or Spotify. Maybe tell a friend about it too. Share it. Anytime you do that, it goes such a long way in growing the podcast. As always, I'm forever thankful for you, the bold ones. And until next time, remember, if you want to follow Jesus, you must be willing to move.